I am Neil Larthos. I am the next Abdullah, and we are going to make you the next Neville Goddard. All right, guys, look, in all seriousness, this is another episode of Manifestation Receipts, where I give you success stories in my personal life where I used the law and it just blew myself away how good this is. Now, I have so many success stories, guys, but I wanted to start this series off with success stories where I manifested an SP before I got into law of assumption, because we've all been manifesting our whole entire lives, but we just didn't know it. And this is another example. So without further ado, let's begin. Okay. So you guys already know I'm a man whore. Okay. I've had many success stories at work. Call human resources. Okay. This is another coworker, SP. So look, we're going to call her Connie. Okay. Now, this was when I worked at another restaurant, but I'm a manager at a restaurant, okay? And I worked with this woman for 5 years. The first 3 years, we never talked to each other. But just like with Tiki and just like with Laura, she was an extremely attractive woman. One that other guys would practically drool over, you know, and like all her stuff on social media, right? But I'd say the difference between her and Laura and Tiki is that she was, or at least in the beginning, she seemed more on the innocent side, right? Now, when those first 3 years that I started working, I already had a decent level of confidence, because even before I got into the law, I have had my decent share of success with women, which is why I sometimes exempt myself from success stories, because it would be better if I was ugly as fuck. But I'm sorry, guys, I can only give you what I have, right? But still, I had natural success with the ladies, but I was still unconsciously using the law. And I can still go back, reverse engineer, and see what I did successfully without even knowing it, so I can help you guys. Because whether you're ugly as fuck or whether you're sexy as fuck like me, the law works regardless. It's not about the external. It's not about the internal. You are the internal, not the external. You are not the mind. You are not the body. You're just the observer of the mind and the body. But I proceed. Connie. The first 3 years, we didn't talk to each other. Now, I'm not blind, okay? You can still see through these glasses. Neo knew that she was a good-looking woman. But I was so focused on the other women that I was dating that I didn't even bother messing with her. And most of the times with SPs, whether they were at work or whether they were in the social circle when I would go out, I usually wouldn't be the one to initiate everything. And this was another one of those cases. So we went 3 years without noticing. We went 3 years without anything ever happening. But during those 3 years, I would catch her looking nonstop. I mean, you know, look, sure, she could have been looking at if we had a customer coming in, or maybe there was someone behind me, and it was like that scene from Spider-Man where he's waving at MJ and then she's like, but fucking 20 times a month, bro, I mean, it gets kind of obvious, right? So I would catch her looking, right? And even to the point where when I would catch her, Sometimes she would even leave a little, just like the fucking movies, right? But it wasn't until I broke up with my ex-girlfriend at the time, about 2 years ago, when I really noticed that she started giving me choosing signals really, really hard, right? It went from staring at me and me catching her staring at me to her when I would hand her, let's say, to-go orders, for example. She would hold on to my hand a lot longer than normal. Now, a lot of you guys might chalk it up to maybe that's just she does that with everybody, maybe she has abandonment issues. But it was fucking obvious, right? And there was even times where she would grab my hand and I would look at her as she was grabbing my hand, and she would just smile and then hop on her merry way. And then if that wasn't enough, there was other moments, just like with Tiki, that she would ask for help and I would be there on the computer or be there on the register helping her out with something. And instead of backing away, so, okay, don't worry, sweetheart, let me do it, right? She would lean in closer, my elbow practically playing ping pong with her tits, okay? And when it got to that point where in her reality, there was no such thing as personal space when it came to me. In her reality, she didn't even have a clue what a personal bubble is when it came to Neo. When it got to that point, I was like, okay, game on. I just punched myself. Game on. Okay? Because especially at work, I didn't want to be that guy who's just like fucking thirsty and going after every woman, okay? Because I didn't want to start the fucking Me 3 movement, okay? But when it got to that point, I was like, oh shit, maybe this is something I could pursue. However, I wasn't trying to pursue her because even after I left my ex, I wasn't so ready to date. I was focused on myself. And as a matter of fact, that was when I started to get into the law of assumption, and I went through one of the biggest spiritual awakening that I've ever had in my whole entire life. And I actually have the testimony of that coming up real soon on my channel. But I already had options. I already had abundance. I wasn't trying to manifest her, okay? But this story is going to be how I manifested her and how I manifested getting her and how I manifested her going away. So let's recap. I was focused on myself. I was detached. I didn't really care if she was giving me choosing signals or not. I was catching her staring at me and her grabbing my arm and, smiling and giggling like a little girl. And she was the one pursuing me, not knowing what the hell personal space. No, personal space didn't exist in her reality. I was the one being chased. So I was already confident because I had my own rotation of women, and plus she was putting me on the pedestal with all the choosing signals that she was giving me. So I did not have to try to act as if I was already in that state, right? Just like I've said on this channel, we are the character that we've been playing our whole entire lives. We are the character who goes to the 9 to 5 every day. But you're only that character. You're only that character because that's who you choose, right? And a lot of the times we're not necessarily consciously choosing it. That's just the one that we think that we are. Therefore, if we're just going about our life in autopilot, we are choosing without even knowing it. And when she was giving me all these choosing signals, I was choosing the state of the guy who gets all the women naturally. This wasn't a situation where I was trying to manifest her. It was happening naturally. So looking back, I can look at how things went with Connie in the beginning and use it as a blueprint on how to act as if for future SPs. So one thing led to another, and it got to the point where I started shooting my shots because I already had a couple of women on the side, and I wanted to add her to the rotation, okay? To the infinity gauntlet of SPs. So at this point, it was one of those situations where I felt like I could do whatever I want with this girl. So it became where I would start reciprocating. I would start flirting with her at work, doing things that let me get my attorney present first, so that way we don't get HR involved, vice versa. And when we made out for the first time, it was one of the sexiest fucking makeout sessions that I've ever had, okay? Now, I don't want to go into details why, because if I give away those details, maybe if I open a Patreon or a membership channel, I might go into more details, but I don't think you guys need to know. But let's just say there was a reason why it was so fucking hot. And remember, at the beginning, I thought she was this innocent girl. I'll say it like this, okay? She was a woman who portrayed herself very conservative, very innocent. And when I saw this naughty side of her, it turned something on in me that I couldn't explain, right? But when we started getting sexual and when we started going out, I started to get attached. And at the time I didn't know why, because I wasn't so deep into the law. I think I was barely starting into my spiritual awakening, getting into my spiritual awakening. But I started getting attached. And without even knowing it, without even saying I'm a loser, I get no pussy, I shifted to the state of the guy who's a loser and doesn't get any pussy. Because the guy who I was being, the state of the guy who gets all the girls that attracted Connie in the first place, if he was making out and having sex with Connie, he wouldn't react like the way I did. And I started feeling like, oh my gosh, this is too good to be true. Because at first, I saw her beneath me and saw her as a woman who was looking up to me, who wanted me. Because even when she got my phone number for the first time and she texted me, I was like, who's this? It wasn't even saved. And she was like, oh my gosh, you didn't even save my number? It's Connie. Don't you remember me? I was the one who was hard to reach. I was this mysterious guy. She was the one chasing me. But it went from her chasing me to me going, when's the next time I can see you? When am I going to see you next? When am I going to see you next? And her just leaving me on red every single time. And right after that, she ghosted me. I went from the guy who I went from the guy who gets all the pussy to the guy who's chasing the girl and putting her on the pedestal. Now, I did all this unconsciously, but now that I know the law, I can look back and actually reenact what I did with the knowledge that I now have. Because again, back then I wasn't as spiritually awakened as I am now. So the blueprint would be to do what I did to attract Connie and to avoid doing what I did to turn her off. Now, I did it unconsciously, but you got to remember, just like when we manifest an SP who we've never even met before, even though I'm no longer living the same 3D reality that I was when I attracted Connie, I can still go back to that state. Because I remember how I walked, I remember how I talked, I remember the hobbies that I was doing on the side when I attracted Connie. So all I have to do, I don't have to change my appearance. I don't have to, wear a different colored hat. I just simply have to put on the armor of the guy who attracted Connie. So when I started getting into law, I developed what I call self-pedestalization, because every single time that I self-pedestalize, I feel the same way that I felt when I attracted Connie, when I attracted Tiki, and when I attracted Laura. They all literally feel the same in my body when I do this technique. And here it is. Instead of telling myself in the mirror, I am loved, I have my SP, I am always chosen, I am abundant, I am love, I love myself. No. I tell myself things like they are flowers in my garden and I'm the fucking sun. They are fucking satellites in my solar system, but I'm fucking gravity. Me and SP have the best sex of our lives. She orgasms so much times that she thinks her vagina is gonna break. I go from pitiful, basic, I'm about to fall asleep affirmations to what the fuck did he just say? Because I've always been the type of guy to go hard or go home. And I promise you that when you say things like this so crazy, whether you use the exact affirmations that I said or your own version of that, if you make them so fucking extreme that people might want to block you, or they might consider you a narcissist, which is why I sometimes call it narc-maxing. The more extreme, the better, because every single time that I make my affirmation so fucking crazy and extreme like that her vagina is gonna break because of how many times I make her orgasm, obviously this is not happening, but the more extreme, the better. So that's what I would say is make your affirmations so fucking crazy that your subconscious has no other choice but to wake the fuck up. But either ways, I will give you more techniques. If not, you can check my visualization video about visualizations do not need to be 1080p 4K resolution. But with that being said, guys, that's my success story, and I plan on making more success stories in the future. I am Neil Arthos. This is all that the I'm Awareness had to say, and I know you're gonna be okay.